upon a dream. I know you, that look in your eyes is so familiar.
Hello, everyone. This is Will and Jason from DisneyInfinity.tv bringing you a new show we have. This is the Playset Potential Spoilercast, Episode 1, where we are going over the Maleficent movie. That is what we are going to spoil this week. And with that, Jason, this was actually your idea, so why don't you just go ahead and introduce this new idea for a show that you have?
Sure, Will. So, yeah, this is an opportunity for us as Disney fans to review latest Disney films in two different lights. One, just as a general Disney fans, an opportunity for us to go over the finer details of the film. So again, I just clarify, this will be full spoilers. So if you haven't seen Maleficent yet and you don't want it to be spoiled, don't listen. Just save it, put it in your watch list on YouTube, and come back and listen to it after you've seen the film. But I think I guess the difference with this show is that we're gonna start by talking about the film in general, what we thought about it, but then we're going to end and talk about how we feel it would fit in the Disney Infinity universe. So we're going to be talking about potential figures, potential power discs, and potential play sets. So it should be a bit of fun. So there's something for everybody, either an Infinity fan or just a Disney movie fan. Hopefully there's something here that you will like.
Awesome. I love the idea. I think this is going to be fun, and it gives Disney Infinity fans, or like you said, Disney fans, an opportunity to really geek out to the latest movies that have been released and try to squeeze that into Infinity a little bit.
And that is the caveat, that we're only going to be putting this particular show out when there's a relevant film to actually review. Depending on the popularity of the show, down the track we may do every now and then maybe some classics, Disney classics, just to spice it up a bit if there happens to be a drought of Disney films. But something tells me I don't think there's going to be too big a drought in the coming years with all the Star Wars and so on films coming out, and the Marvel films, I should say.
Yeah, so I'm guessing the next movie that we might be doing this with is Big Hero 6, which has a release date of November 7th. That's not it. That's not right.
No, Guardians of the Galaxy will be the next one. When's that coming out? Isn't it?
That comes out, this summer. And then we also have Planes, Fire, and Rescue, which will be a fun one for sure. That comes out in July. So...
And it's funny, as a bit of a backstory, this is something I started doing unconsciously. Like, the last Disney film I saw before Maleficent, I think, was Planes.
Okay.
Did Frozen come after I don't know. Anyway, let's assume it's Planes. I just remember when I was watching Planes, specifically thinking to myself, I really want that character as a figure in Disney Infinity. And I sort of unconsciously watch Disney films now, thinking, what can they do with this for Infinity? For me, so to speak. So, it's kind of natural, and we're seeing that the community is making amazing fan creations of classic Disney figures and drawing what their interpretation of what the Infinity figure would be like. I think it's something natural that as Infinity fans we're doing anyway. So why not create a show where we could specifically talk about those things?
Completely agree.
So why don't we get started then?
All right, sounds good.
So yeah, Maleficent. What did you think, Will? I've got some. Well, why don't I start? Because I've got. I can summarize the feeling of this film. It's pretty much it's a split film. You either love it, or you hate it, and it really comes down to the key character of Maleficent. And I think, my personal opinion, I generally loved the film. But as a Maleficent fan, the more and more I've thought about it, the more and more I think it was a really great film if Maleficent wasn't Maleficent. But the fact that Maleficent is Maleficent knocks it down a peg, and I'll tell you why. Because even Disney seems somewhat confused about that. And again, full spoilers. The whole point of this film is it's trying to do that. A lot of people comparing it to Wicked, where it's this retelling of Sleeping Beauty from Maleficent's point of view, and turns Maleficent effectively into a good person, not a villain. And the problem is, Maleficent is a villain. She's not only a villain, she's probably one of the greatest Disney villains ever created as far as her look and so on. And my point is, Disney themselves seem confused because the Maleficent in the parks, the Maleficent figure that's coming out for Disney Infinity, which we'll go into more detail about later on, is the evil Maleficent. And yet the film ends with this, what's the word? I'll use the word angelic Maleficent, but the good Maleficent. Right. She's got wings, she's not wearing black. But the point is, Disney still know who the popular Maleficent is here. It's the villain Maleficent. That's what we're seeing in parks. That's what we're seeing in the figures. So do you see that, again, brand confusion there?
Well, I do, but you also got to think it's a retelling of the story too, and I think it's a little of both. I think it's not only showing a different side of that story, but I also think it's a little bit of changing the story a bit. And that's kind of up to you to decide if that's the part that really is going to be an issue for you. But they're going to bring to the parks what's classic. The movie is brand new. It's only been out for a couple weeks. And so if they ever do that, then it's going to take some time. But there's also different stages of that character. So who's to say that the evil Maleficent at the park isn't Act 1 Maleficent? You know what I mean? So
yeah. No, I totally agree. I understand what you're saying. I just think I think they know that the villain is the popular, the good Maleficent. I don't know, just not as interesting as evil Maleficent. But that's the crux of the issue. That's where, because the critics have been bagging the film. I just think it's that's unnecessary. But just as Maleficent, it was clearly penned by Pirate Steven,
right? Making the bad guys a good guy.
Apologist out there. But anyway, let's just spend a little time sort of breaking it. I got some notes here from the film, and we can go sort of from the start and work out what. And again, most of my notes are based on the Maleficent character and where I think they may have gone right or wrong with the character. But the first thing I wanted to just touch on, and I think you'll agree with this, I don't think there was enough time spent explaining why Maleficent looks like the spawn of Satan.
Mm-hmm.
She's a fairy, right? That's what the opening up. She was the fairy, like king of the fairies or whatever, protector of the fairies, yet she looks like the spawn of Satan. Look at those wings and the horns, and I'm thinking that doesn't look like a fairy at all. I would have liked a little bit more explanation of how they, thought, we'll just call her a fairy, and all fairies have, clearly what look like dragon wings.
That is something I completely agree with. She never, even as a small child, even when she was like good Maleficent, like as a child and innocent, she still looked scary, and and I'm like, there needs to be an explanation here. I almost wished like the horns kind of grew out of her once she became evil or something like that. Maybe she just had like tiny stumps to start off with, but then they grew evil when kind of her heart was broken.
I totally agree, and that sort of brings me to the next point, is that the whole point, well, I wouldn't say the whole point, but the whole point of her having the horns in the original thing is because she turned into the dragon at the end of, obviously, Sleeping Beauty, which she doesn't do in this film. So I'm like, well, if you're going to keep the, that character trait of dragon horns and dragon wings, then maybe she should have been the one to turn into the dragon. And I feel there's a couple places where I've got a phenomenal ending that I'm going to share at the end of the show that I think ties it all together beautifully. But I would have liked to seen in the scene where, it doesn't matter which one, but basically I would have liked to have seen her change into a dragon in one of the battle scenes, if not that opening battle scene, and then explain the fact they could have done it that after her wings were clipped, she could no longer turn into the dragon. I think that would have maybe appease the Maleficent fans a little bit more. Jumping ahead a bit, but it's relevant. What did you think of the dragon? Myself, I was disappointed in the dragon representation at the end of the film.
I
A
wasn't disappointed.
little too feathery in my opinion.
Oh, you mean just visually, like?
Yeah, I'm just talking visually as
Oh.
far as compared. It didn't feel like the Maleficent dragon from Sleeping Beauty enough to me.
You know what? I was indifferent. I didn't really put much thought into it either way, but I could definitely see what you mean by that.
Yeah,
But it could have been that way because the character was a kind-hearted character, and he was also a bird, and so they kind of had a little bit of that metamorphosis included in that. But I don't know. I can see what you're saying. I'm not saying
yeah,
I disagree with
yeah.
you.
I like that character. Like that's one
Hmm.
change that I think that was a good change. Obviously, I believe the bird's name in the original is Diablo, and they changed this to Diaval, I believe it was.
Yeah, yeah.
And I kind of liked what they did there. I think that was good. And particularly the CG bird had a lot of character. Like when he
Hmm.
was in the, I liked how they still had that, uh, what's the word,
Crow.
personality to it and
Oh,
so on.
yeah.
So that was cool. And overall, I loved the world that they built. Like I really felt like this was one of the best live action fairy tales that I'd seen in a long time, and really brought me back to the days of the Dark Crystal and the
Hmm.
Labyrinth, and really made me pine to go, why? I could have spent forever in that world. Like I want a film that's just that. It really is like a true, retelling of a new Labyrinth or Dark Crystal type film. What did you think about the actual world they created?
I totally agree with you. I told everyone after I saw it that it's definitely a movie that you shouldn't be afraid to take your children to, but I never once felt like it was a movie made for children. I mean, it was dark, it had its adult moments. The overall story of this kind of war between two factions is very adult, and they didn't really pull any punches with that in mind. The world was very thought out and violent, although it wasn't like bloody and stuff. They did a
No,
good job of that, but it was yeah, and it was visually it was stunning. I mean, the vistas with the castle, especially the kind of the fairyland. I don't know what it's called. That was really pretty and unique visually, but the vista with the castle being kind of on that mountain in the middle of this like valley was just gorgeous and jaw dropping.
and it's not too late, hopefully, for Epcot to abandon this whole Avatar plan and just replace that nighttime thing with the Maleficent world, because like
Yeah,
it just looked amazing. I'm like, yes, let's put that in Epcot at night, Animal Kingdom. Like that would be amazing.
please,
Yeah.
please.
Not that I'm a avid Avatar hater. I'm just saying that Maleficent world at night, super cool.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, but I think the big thing from this, I think everyone universally agrees that Angelina Jolie nailed this part.
Yeah, she did. It's like it was made for her.
Absolutely. And I'm like, I mean, that's hard, really hard, for big actors like that, because it seems like, whatever role they seem to play, you tend to just think of them as that actor, so to speak, if you know
Hmm.
what I mean. But to me, she just absolutely nailed it. Like, I couldn't believe I'm watching it, and she was making me appreciate these changes that they were making to the character, Maleficent. I wasn't totally like, dark and foaming at the mouth, like I can't believe you're not green yet.
Right?
She was like, okay, I'll accept this, these minor changes in your character.
Yeah, they couldn't have cast anyone better for that part. She really nailed it and hit it out of the park.
Yeah, and that whole christening baby scene, the sort of the one that was the most, closest to the original, was just such a great scene.
Yeah, it was.
Like, just visually amazing. And I appreciate the fact that I think they were trying to create situations there where she was creating a green smoke to sort
Hmm.
of give shots that looked like she was green,
Yep.
which kind of plays into my alternate ending later on in the show, which is cool.
Well, I mean, they definitely with the dragon, with the bird, and with that green smoke, they definitely played homage to the original, just presenting it slightly different.
I agree with the critics that virtually every other person in the film was pretty weak.
Hmm.
acting wise, and I would have liked to have seen more from Aurora, maybe a slightly, I don't know, older, maybe. I don't know what it was, but like, I mean, I was enjoying the whole Maleficent, point of view type thing, but I would have liked to have seen a little bit more from that character, and maybe even the Prince Philip character, which I thought looked like it was straight from one direction, a little bit too teen, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my biggest disappointment was the king. I don't know why. I just from the very beginning, he just wasn't good to me, and not necessarily wasn't a good actor. I just felt they could have cast someone in that role to be much more effective. I mean, on the one hand, I really didn't like him, so I guess they had that going for him because ended up not liking the king very much.
Yeah. No, look, I completely agree with that. But I think, yeah, like just looking at my notes, I think that's about I think that's about all that I wanted to say about that. Have you got anything else you wanted to say about the movie itself?
You know what? So let's do this. I know you have an alternate ending, and I'm really
Yes.
excited to hear that.
Yeah.
But before you do that, let's give a Disney Infinity TV kind of thumbs up or thumbs down. So tell me, as a Disney Infinity or as a Disney fan, should you go see this movie, and kind of like your reason why, and then I'll go.
Okay, cool. So I'm giving this a resounding thumbs up, and I think every Disney fan should go see it. And in fact, I think if you are a Disney fan, I think you get a bonus like 50% increase in your enjoyment level because you sort of, you tend to be closer to the original source material, and it doesn't necessarily destroy the source material. So I just think overall, really cool, feels like a Disney film, super great effort it really felt like an animated Disney fairy tale.
Awesome. So a thumbs up from you. I agree with you. I got to give it a thumbs up. I went into the movie not really knowing what to expect because I didn't know if it was like a prequel to the original or if it was kind of a spin-off or a retelling, and it was kind of all of the above. And for that reason alone, I enjoyed it tremendously because it was unexpected, and I like those little small tips here and there to the original. The story, whether you decide to kind of view it as official canon of the Sleeping Beauty story or not, that's okay. It's a good movie in and of itself, and if you take if you take Sleeping Beauty and you take Maleficent as two different movies, you can enjoy them both in their own respects. So I give it a thumbs up. You should go see it. So if you are interested in the movie, you should definitely do that. Go and watch it. Jason and I really enjoyed it.
Yes, so I will give my alternate ending now that makes the film 10 times better. Now, caveat that I believe this is the case, and correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I believe that the castle at Disney World is Sleeping Beauty's castle. I think that's what it is. I'm pretty sure it's Cinderella's castle at Disneyland and Sleeping Beauty's castle at Disney World.
Yep.
Even if it's not, this still applies because I love, like, just quick sidestep. I have to give full credit to whoever came up with that Walt Disney intro, that new one, is just amazing to me. I love the fact that they play with that. The Tron one was sensational.
Mm-hmm.
I love the one in Enchanted where it zooms into the castle. I just love that they switch that up each time. It's absolutely amazing, and it was no different this time how they started with the new, I guess we'd call it new, Sleeping Beauty's castle.
Totally agree.
But as I stated before, as I was watching the film, I was creating fan fiction on the fly in my head because I'm liking this Maleficent, but it's conflicting with the fact that I like the original villain Maleficent. So on the fly, I'm generating fan fiction, and that's how I came up with the idea. Okay, well, in my version, she would have turned into a dragon in that fight or whatever. But anyway, the way I would have ended the film is firstly the king would not have died the way that he did in this film. The king wouldn't have died, and basically what would have happened is at the end of the film, we would have seen a little bit more of Aurora and Prince Philip or whatever having a bit more of a happily ever after moment, and a bit more of like the dark landscape becoming this bright, happily ever after experience. And we see a camera perspective shift to reveal the front classic Disney World castle facade, effectively making all right with the world again, so that we're seeing that. We see Maleficent fly, do her epic, speed fly to say, yeah, she's got her wings back and she's, all good, whatever. And then we pan up, we do a quick pan up the tower, and at the top of the tower, in a dungeon-like setting, we see the king, and we see that the king is retelling the story from his perspective, and we see him writing in the original Sleeping Beauty book that features in the animation, and we very specifically see him drawing an illustration of the christening scene or whatever, or the naming day scene or whatever it is, and so he's the one that basically effectively wrongly tells that she was green, because he paints her as green because of that scene with the smoke. And so we get an explanation now of why Maleficent is green from the cartoon, because that's what the king was saying. He's painted her out to be much more evil than she actually was. And then the film ends with him closing the book with the Sleeping Beauty title from the animation. Thank you very much. Ties it up so beautifully, so that when you watch Sleeping Beauty, and most Disney animated films started with an opening of the fairy tale book, just makes so much more sense, because then you're watching the cartoon going, well, this is the evil king's misretelling of this story.
Right. And from his eyes, she was evil, and she never had any sort of redemption whatsoever.
Exactly. And that way, just doing that nice little change there, you're completely not stepping on the toes of the original Sleeping Beauty story, and everything makes sense.
See, I hate you for that, because now I'm never gonna look at the movie the same way, because that is too perfect, and that's how I wished it would have ended. Because
everything would have made sense, because the king, as he was running away, might have been confused. He doesn't know that it was the crow that turned into the dragon. In his mindset, no, Maleficent turned into a dragon. Just everything makes a lot more sense. Just look for the director's cut of that version. I may have to make that version, but anyway,
please do.
That's my alternate ending. But yeah, overall, great film. Just I think there was some weird decisions on their behalf to try and repaint this character as a good character, when clearly everyone just loves her as a villain.
Yeah, cool.
So So anyway, let's move on to the Infinity section of the talk.
Awesome. So the first figure is obvious, because there is an announced Maleficent character. So let's come up with two other characters. Jason, I'm going to go ahead and throw it to you first. What do you think one of the second characters should be for the Maleficent playset?
Probably the crow guy, whatever his name was again.
Yeah, Duval.
Duval, whatever. I guess him. I guess he would offer a lot of potentials, particularly if he can change into a dragon, change into a bird, and what else he change into, a wolf or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a fun character to play with, and obviously the perfect match for Maleficent in a playset situation.
Yeah. There's already the crow mechanic, so you could just revise that a bit from Lone Ranger and add dragon. How cool would it be to be a fire-breathing dragon that could also fly around and stuff? That would be awesome.
Definitely. And the third character is a tough one, so I'll hand it over to you.
So I thought about this, and I was hoping you were going to pick the crow, because that was my second one as well. For the third, for me, it's got to be Aurora. We need another princess. We need an original classic princess, and so they can paint her how they want. Hopefully, they would make her more look like the cartoon, and it kind of just be like a combination world between the movie and the cartoon. Unfortunately, though, that's as far as I've gotten, because I have no idea what her powers would be, or what her ability unlocks would be. I just know I want more princesses in the game, and she would kind of be perfect for that.
Well, as I would imagine it, in this Maleficent's world, I would suggest that she either received some form of magic training from Maleficent or the other,
Or the fairies.
other three fairies. That's what I would imagine that they would go with, something like that. But yeah, I guess. And look, for future shows, I guess it's always an option to not have, three figures.
Yeah.
We could have left it at Maleficent, and we assume at this stage we're only getting Maleficent. And again, as I stated, the Maleficent figure that's being released is clearly the villain version, Angelina Jolie, Maleficent. So.
Well, that's until you fixed it, though, right? Didn't you?
Yes, I
fix
did.
that this week?
I did fix that. Into the King's version of the story. But while you're pulling that up, I'll move on to the. So the next thing we basically need to talk about is a power disc, and so this is kind of a tough one because a power disc can be, and we're specifically talking about like yeah, there it is, beautiful.
Awesome. I'm sure there's going to be a custom figure that comes out like that.
Absolutely, I'm sure there will. And if there isn't, I'll produce it.
Cool.
But yeah, so a power disc could be a vehicle, it could be a weapon, it could be a wearable. I guess we could also say a costume change.
Yeah.
Technically,
Or
could
even
we?
an adventure, but probably not adventure because we're going to actually have a kind of a play set, so we don't need a toy box adventure.
Yeah, or we could group that in with the playset discussion or whatever. But I guess to me, I don't know, it's the thing that jumps to me is I would want a power disc that's called the Maleficent's Curse. And I just like to see it. Yeah, I just like to see. That's exactly it. Like, you know how she put the person to sleep and they were like floating in the air?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it should be. Maleficent's Curse. And you could just basically zap them with it. They'll immediately just go stiff and start floating in the air. You can push them around and stuff. What do you think?
I love it. I think that's a cool idea.
Yeah.
That's a great power disc.
So what's one other one we can think of?
One that I thought of, and I don't even know really how the power would work in game, but it would be, and I'm guessing maybe it would kind of be an Aurora themed one, even though it probably technically should be Maleficent. But it's got to be a true love's kiss, and I don't know if if maybe it's a buff, and so it makes you stronger or something. Or it could be like a power where like a character blows a kiss at another character and it does something to them. I don't know.
It could be a defense-based mechanic.
Yeah.
Like,
that would make most sense.
No, that's a really cool one. I think that's nailed right there.
Yep.
What about for the texture discs and stuff? What section of the film would you like to see represented in a texture disc and a sky dome?
4. I want 4 of those. I want 2 obviously being the castle and like a castle sky dome, with kind of another kingdom texture set. Although that's really not needed, but I'm sure they could do some interesting stuff with that. But yeah. On one side, you would have like the castle, and it would kind of be the kingdom, and you turn the camera, and then you see a wall of thorns. That would be part of that one.
Totally. I could see that in the Sky Dome, having one section of it all just thorns, so you can encase your toy box surrounded by thorns. That's really cool.
Yeah. What about you? Do you got ideas for toy box?
It's got to be that night texture. It's got to be that Avatar night,
Fairyland.
Glow-escent fairy light type texture at night. That would just be amazing, in Disney Infinity, and would really be conducive. Like, I could just see people creating, building out that world that they've only barely touched on. Would be so amazing to have those, like, tree creatures type things walking around, and I just think that would be sensational. But yeah, definitely that nighttime glowing look, I guess.
Well, and one thing that we've talked a lot about with Disney Infinity throughout all of our shows is, even though sometimes it's a little simplified, the lighting in the game and the atmospheric effects are just so spot on. Like, having that nighttime scene would be gorgeous, and it would really set you up to like really put you in that place and in that mood.
Oh, absolutely. And so finally, I guess the playset. So if there was a playset for it, or an adventure, as you said, what And for those that maybe aren't cluey, playsets in Disney Infinity aren't just retelling of the movies. They're generally sort of inspired by or slightly different, or just exploring some element of that world, but sort of maintaining the feel and vibe of the franchise or film. So if you were going to create a playset or an adventure, what generally do you think that would entail?
Well, I have a couple ideas. The one I think the first one's they're both similar, but the first one, the time period is slightly different. It would be interesting to have a playset that is the original catalyst to separate these two worlds, and whatever that event is, if it's a conflict between humans and this fairy world, or some other event, it would be really interesting to kind of see what sparked the conflict between the two. Again, timing is a little bit weird in that scenario because we're talking about the future versions of these characters, but it doesn't mean you couldn't play in that time period.
Yeah.
What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think this one would really work well with the new tower defense mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
I think you could do a retelling of that initial battle and have waves of the king's enemies coming towards Maleficent, and be sending out the tree troops and all that sort of stuff. I think that'd be kind of cool.
It's crazy you say that, Jason, because literally that was my idea, or I also had that idea. It wasn't mine, but I also had that idea and that would have been perfect for a toy box adventure. But you're right, that would work great as a part of the playset. It's just a certain level of the playset story.
Yeah. And maybe the only other thing maybe you could do is maybe almost like a maze type, stealth type thing based on the section of the film where Maleficent was trying to find Aurora in the castle. That'd be kind of cool too. That'd be kind of cool
with all the iron and stuff.
Maybe that's a good toy box idea for upcoming toy box artists.
Yeah, I like that.
I also just thought of another power disc too. We should have Maleficent wings.
Maleficent wings.
It'd be really nice to be able to have a Maleficent that has the wings, so that she can fly in Disney Infinity.
Yeah.
Just like Condor Man's wings, effectively.
Yep. Agreed. That seems almost too obvious now that you mentioned it.
It does. So yeah, I think that's gonna wrap it up. I guess we definitely, if you're watching this or listening to this, we would love to hear what your thoughts are in the comments. Let us know what you would do with figures, power discs, texture discs, or playset adventure, or even just an idea for a toy box based in the Maleficent world.
Yeah, and if we get enough of those, we can even have a Maleficent Spoilercast rewind where we can kind of pick out our favorites from your guys' ideas and have another show like this, but just mentioning that. Otherwise, we will definitely mention it on our normal show, Inside Infinity, which is recorded live every Monday evening at DisneyInfinity.tv. That show is brought to you in partnership with the DisneyInfinityFans.com. They are the unofficial Disney Infinity Fans forum on the web. So either way, let us know. Send us drop us a line, info@DisneyInfinity.tv, or you can look for us on the forums and do it there. We'd love to talk about that stuff. Hey, so this is good. I loved breaking down the story. And it was also fun just kind of coming up. We used to do this a lot on early shows of the Inside Infinity podcast where we would just pick a topic or pick a movie or something, and how would we make a playset with that. And this is fun. This is a good idea.
Definitely, and I'm looking forward to the next Disney film now. It gives me something else gives me another excuse to go see all the Disney films as they come out.
Totally. So it does look like the next one's going to be Disney Planes Fire and Rescue, and that's coming out, I think, July 18th here in the States. Is probably pretty close for you in Australia. Mm-hmm. And I know Planes is something that I would have liked to have seen a playset for the original, even though the movie was a little bit, I enjoyed it, but I'm expecting this one to be better, so that one's going to be a fun topic.
Definitely, and Planes is something we don't really have in Infinity, which is why it would have been nice to have that.
Yep. Well, great, everyone. Well, thank you so much for listening and watching. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/Disney Infinity TV. And also look for Disney Infinity TV on iTunes or Stitcher Radio, which is device agnostic for your Android and Windows Phone devices. And until next time, we hope you enjoy the show, and we will talk to you very soon.